Hello, this is Sam Gerrans from samgerrans.com. Today is Friday, April the 21st, 2023, and today the subject is Johnny Depp is Russia and Amber Heard is the collective West. Now, this may not make sense on first blush, but I'll bear with me, see if you agree when I get to the end of this. I've noticed that the ruling elites, they tend to have what I call pageants. So they will describe things or they will celebrate things and show you things perhaps in microcosm, which explain a bigger picture, but they don't actually say it. And sometimes you see parallels, and perhaps my mind is just made this way, but I saw an obvious parallel when I followed, and I did follow to some extent, the whole Johnny Depp, Amber Heard court case. I was interested in it for several reasons. I was interested in it because, to be perfectly honest, I think we're all a bit sick of this believe all women thing. And Amber Heard absolutely showed that the last thing you should do is believe all women. But she sort of made all her claims when believe all women was a thing, and Johnny Depp's career was just thrown under the bus. I have to say, I'm not a big fan of Johnny Depp, like, per se. I don't watch films. I didn't even know who Amber Heard was. I'd seen a picture. That was it. But it seemed interesting from the point of view of the fact that men's lives are being destroyed on the say-so of any woman. Any woman could come along at any time and say anything. And basically, the onus is on you, if you're male, to prove that you didn't do whatever it is some potentially crazy woman has just decided to take it in her head to do. Now, this is completely different to women who have actually had bad things happen to them and have actual evidence. But I've noticed that as we collapse into delusion, that evidence doesn't matter anymore. It's just opinion. So you can just say anything. And that's why I was interested in it. I thought it was an interesting case, and all the rest of it. And a lot of other people watched it too. Now, it struck me as I was watching this that there was a parallel, an obvious parallel, because the special military operation in Ukraine was just beginning around this time. And I looked at Johnny Depp, and you think, yeah, Johnny Depp, he's sort of grubby. He's, he's a bit overweight now, and I mean, he's getting on. He's older than me, I think. Was he 58, something like that? He was very good looking at one point. You may still think he is, and good for him if you do. But he's obviously seen better days, and he's somewhat debauched. And to be perfectly honest, I was thinking, I found it hard to kind of take a side on the basis of personalities. I was clear in my mind that what he was doing was trying to clear his name. And I didn't care about Hollywood people and stuff like that, but I did watch on YouTube some of the case, and the question is, is he debauched? Okay, yes, he is. Is he? Does he have lots of faults? Oh, yes. Let's say he does. But the question is he a wife beater? And this is what was being claimed, that on the basis of Amber Heard's, imagination, as it turned out. Was he a wife beater? No, he wasn't. And people didn't like that. What they wanted was to stay with the ideology. A lot of people did. And then I realized, this is a bit like the difference between, you could say, the collective West and Russia. I mean, Russia too. Russia is seen, certainly from the West. I mean, the view of Russia is quite out of date, but okay, let's just go with what people think it is. Russia has seen better days. It used to be a superpower, and perhaps it is now militarily, but it was the core of the Soviet Union, and it kind of collapsed into the Yeltsin years, and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and it's well known for having corruption and so on and so forth. I don't know. I mean, clearly a lot of countries have corruption, and one man's corruption is another man's, just sort of reaching an amicable agreement and so on. But on the face of it, yes, it all seemed true. Russia is evil and terrible. And Amber Heard, let's face it, she's pretty, and she looks as though butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. And she's got a view. And it struck me that the collective West is really Amber Heard. She's claiming that this man has done an evil thing to her, and if you don't believe her, then you're a bad person too. And she also knows how to use the media, which the collective West, as I've said before, it's going to run out of weapons, but it'll never run out of lies. And so as I watched this case, it struck me that in microcosm, what we were seeing was played out was the kind of almost the exchange between Russia as Johnny Depp and the collective West as Amber Heard in microcosm. It was a small pageant, a little theatre, a small story that tells a much bigger story in ways that people can understand who don't care about big stories. They only care about small stories. But what was interesting is that once the evidence was in and the testimony, actual testimony came through, and when you were actually held, when Amber Heard was held, her feet was held to the fire, where she wasn't able just to, bandy about surmise and invective and ambiguity. When you get down to actual facts about what actually happened, when, where, how, and so on, actual facts, it all fell apart. And I thought, well, this is quite true also of, well, it is entirely true, of the backstory to the conflict in Ukraine. And just as an aside, I'm interested in languages, and I happen to use a particular online language learning sort of utility or app, if you want to call it that. And like a lot of other places, they've just started virtue signaling by changing their logo to "We stand with Ukraine" and all the rest of this nonsense. And the fact is, these people are going to be really ashamed downstream when they discover what the truth is behind this. Now, this isn't to say that, as it were, Johnny Depp is without fault, or Russia is without without any sort of cause for criticism. Of course, you can point to things that are bad about Russia, and lots of people do. In fact, Russians do. Stop and ask any Russian in the street, what don't you like about Russia? Make sure you've got an hour and a half free, because they'll tell you all about it. But is Russia a wife beater? This is the actual question, as it were. And the fact is that it's not. Is it a bit overweight? Is it a bit, does it spend too much money on this or too much money on that? Is it a little bit corrupt, if you want to use that language? Sure, it is. But is it a wife beater? No, it's not a wife beater. And if you want to know, if you want a bit of backstory, I'm going to link down below to a talk by John Mearsheimer, which he presented in 2015. He's an academic. I think he's at the University of Chicago. It doesn't matter, but he's a United States, an American academic. But you can see that he doesn't really like Russia, so he's not a supporter of Russia. But he does present the facts of the case long enough ago, before most Westerners could probably had even heard of Ukraine. Certainly couldn't find it on a map. But if you don't know about this situation, you should watch that. At least do yourself the favour of watching it, because in the future, if there's going to be a future, I personally am not entirely sure there's going to be one, but let's say there is one, the people who are virtue signalling that they stand with Ukraine, being entirely ignorant of the backstory of this, are going to be ashamed of themselves. And, clearly a bit like the people who supported unquestioningly Amber Heard, because let's face it, Amber Heard looks pretty. She looks like she's telling the truth on the superficial level. How could you possibly question her? And also, we know we must believe all women. Women never lie. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. But they do. The fact is that some do. Some do. Those who don't will have evidence, and if that evidence is presented and it's compelling, then the man should be convicted, and that's absolutely right. But just hearsay, just opinion, just this, where Amber Heard was, where she was really strong, as a lot of women are, is in the sort of the hinterland, in the grey area. But when you ask for facts, times, reality, and evidence, it all fell apart, and you could tell she was lying. And although, she, will claim this and claim that and claim the other, the fact is that most people could see that she was lying. And there will come a point, I think, if there's going to be a future of any kind, where Russia is going to present the evidence of, for example, the chemical laboratories, the biological laboratories, over 20, I think it's between 20 and 30, the United States was running, and still runs, in fact, in Ukraine, some of them, dedicated to killing Slavs. How about that? That's just one thing. There are tons of things like this. What about the Nazification of Ukraine? And this is reality. This isn't Russian propaganda. Just go online. You'll see you'll see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers, shouting Sieg Heil and with their Nazi flags behind them, etc. This isn't made up. This is real. You just have to go and have a little bit of a look. And so, this is the Amber Heard. This is the reality of the Amber Heard, as it were. So once the evidence came out, going back to our good friend Johnny Depp and his former wife, Amber Heard, it was quite clear that despite the fact that, Johnny Depp, he took a load of drugs and ended up sleeping on the floor covered in ice cream or whatever it was. Yeah, sure, he had his faults. We all accept that. But was he a wife beater? No, he wasn't. And a calm, methodical, and exhaustive examination of the facts in a structured manner revealed that to be the case, and the same will be true, I believe, for Russia. So Heard is quite clearly, despite the fact she's very hot and all the rest of it, she's a psychopathic liar, and that's been demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt. But what's interesting is, because she is a psychopathic liar, even after the court has condemned her, we all watched and saw what she really is, she's still denying it. She will never ever admit to what she's done, and I think that that's another parallel that we're going to find with the collective West. But my view, and this is my view, I think we have in Russian "голод и холод," hunger and cold. Hunger and cold will bring the West to its to face facts. It'll continue obviously to lecture people and to claim that it's doing something righteous when it's just murdering people. Is it alone in that? No, lots of other places have done it too. But its sense of entitlement and its sense of sort of self-proclaimed righteousness is actually psychopathic when you get right down to it. But I do think that what's going to change it is when reality comes home to bite. And as reality has come home to bite Amber Heard, she's now pretty much broke as far as I know. And, her looks are going to start falling apart in the next couple of years. And it's also, I should imagine, quite expensive to maintain this sort of look. And so that's going to be the reality for her. I did say at the very beginning of this conflict that the real war was against you if you live in the West. The only thing that makes any sense, if you look at how the West has conducted itself, is this is a continuation of a systematic takedown of the West. That's what this is really about. If they can hurt Russia, that's all to the good, but quite clearly the main target is America, is Europe, and all these other places, as has been the case for years. And if you look at the people who are doing this, they were destroying and turning the Western countries into tyrannies and into third world countries. They've been doing it. This has been their entire project. So it's the only thing that makes sense. A lot of people claim that they're just inept and greedy. I do agree that some of them are inept and all of them are greedy. But I don't think that explains where we're actually going. It doesn't make any sense. Is Russia going to be better? Is the fair world order intrinsically better than the West? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. As I have said before, people who are waxing so enthusiastic about what do they call it, the multipolar world, and how this is the way to go and everything's going to be wonderful. I do point out again, we did have a multipolar world not so long ago in my lifetime. It was called the Cold War, and people were pretty evil on both sides of that. So I don't hold up much hope myself. But anyway, I thought I would just make that little comparison between the Depp Heard on the one side and the collective West and Russia on the other, and perhaps it might be interesting. Anyway, that's it. Details of where I upload to, how you can join my Substack and Telegram channel, support my work and download my books free are in the description. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.